Glad everybody's here. This is our last class on technology and living well with technology and being wise about that. And so what we wanted to do this morning is recap some of the things we said over the past few weeks and offer some practical suggestions and hear from you guys. I hope it's kind of a discussion class where you say, here are some things that I found helpful. So one of the things that we said early on is we've been thinking about the way that our technology changes us and the way that it intrudes upon us for good and ill, right? If you're driving and you have an emergency, whether it's good news or bad, it's nice to get that news right away. And I think sometimes we get a little bit too, the phones are the end of the world, that kind of thing. And the truth is there's all sort of wonderful and good things that come because of the communications technology that we have now. It's great to be able to keep in touch with folks who are a long way away, and it's great to be able to share Easter pics with my cousin this morning, and it's great to be able to check the weather when you're driving. All these things that we have are good things.
It's nice always to have a camera with you and a flashlight, too. Those are really handy
that's
on
true.
my smartphone.
Remember before they put the flashlight on the phone and you just had to use the screen as a flashlight? We've also sort of slowly and innocuously disproved the existence of Bigfoot now that everyone has a camera at all times. But all of that stuff, it also means that there are dangers that come with this. Anything that's got power for good has power for evil as well. And so one of the things that we talked about, I think that's a kind of underlying theme that's gone through all the weeks we've talked in this class, is the danger of distraction, of phone addiction, and the inability to be present and attend to things. We talked about like how much easier it is to not pay attention to things you want to pay attention to. Whether that's during church service, you're trying to read your Bible on your phone and the notifications or the ads or whatever pop up, or you're trying to just be present in a conversation or on a trip or something like that, but the phone gives you something to do where you don't have to think and put that work in. So we're trying to think about some practical things we can do in light of these things. How do we maintain attentiveness? How do we benefit from the good side of boredom? How do we avoid conflicts online in those sort of situations? So I have a couple, and I know Matt has some as well. One thing I wanted to say is that fasts are a good time. Little micro fasts and also long fasts. Lisa was saying last week, do you remember this? Lisa was saying that when Eden went on the Trek trip, she was really nervous about not having her phone for a week or 10 days, whatever it was. And that then when she came back, she was talking about how freeing it was and how good she felt because of that. I'm curious, does anybody have a practice where you say, here's kind of what I do in regards to times when I just set it away, put my laptop or my phone or the TV off? What are some things that you guys do in terms of fasting from it? Certain hours of the day, certain places? Anybody got a thought on that, Madison?
I don't have like hard and fast rules day to day, but I notice when I get really overwhelmed that I naturally leave it alone because like this weekend leading up to Easter, my family's in town and we're celebrating Elliot's birthday a little bit late, and I just have so much going on that like I want to be able to hang out with them, and I just realize like the constantness of it is too much in certain times of my life.
All right, good. So recognizing this is a time when my attention is really needed elsewhere. You said being overwhelmed when there's 1,000 things going on. Yeah? Anybody else? Yeah, Laura.
When I realize that I have been spending way too much time on my phone, I'll try and set it to black and white so that it's way more clear, and then I'll
Now that's a good tip. Someone needs to show the older people among us how to do this, I suspect. By older people, I mean me. Laura says that she sets her phone to black and white so that it's less engaging. You ever notice that things that are supposed to catch and hold your attention, addictive things, are bright colors? Think about if you're in a Las Vegas driving down the strip or in these casinos or things designed to attract little kids. Bright colors always catch our attention. So put it in black and white mode. That's pretty good. Yeah. Anybody else have ways you think about just setting it aside, times or situations? Yeah, Adria?
Whenever I'm in a conversation with someone, if we're not planning anything right away, I usually try and have it out of sight, so I'm not just looking at my phone while they're doing stuff.
All right, it's trying to get it out of sight unless you're like needing the calendar or whatever to plan something. So in conversations, have it out of sight. I wrote a book called The Tech-Wise Family. He's got good advice. These are not all things that I do, and maybe some I should, maybe some that, but one of the things they says is they put their phones to bed. He says, put your phone to bed before you go to bed and make it get up after you. I thought that was kind of an interesting thought.
Well, I'll pick up on that. Another time that I think is good to leave your phone aside would be during worship. I don't know if we have a practice of that. It's hard if you are dependent on your phone or iPad or something for your Bible. Again, I think sometimes when we are, it justifies us kind of, piddling in other things like text and things that distract us from worship. But for me, it's when I'm doing morning devotional time and prayer. That's time that I don't want to, have my email open or have my phone going for that 30 minutes or whatever, so that I can try to devote my attention to the Lord and hear from Him before I jump in on all of my tasks and things. This has more to do, some of my ideas have a little bit more to do with just like social media use. And so I'm going to just state the obvious here, which maybe doesn't need stated, or maybe for some it does, that just a reminder to us as we engage online with others, that there's not a time or a place that we don't take our faith with us. That it's not like here's a free pass where I can forget my Christian witness in the world and just say whatever it is that I want to say. Robin's nodding very energetically back there. That's good. I'm glad that at least you need, amen, that very obvious advice. But yeah, it's, there's no place in our lives where we as Christians are not called to be Christians. And that includes this virtual realm and social media. And I think sometimes, because it almost has this quality of like a game that we're playing. Maybe there's like a distance where it doesn't feel real, or it just feels too like we're caught up in the moment. There's kind of this obsessiveness that sometimes we get, especially if we're arguing with someone on a, like a Facebook post, which, side note here, is probably not a good thing, not a good place or time to get into a long argument with someone in the comments of someone else's post on Facebook. Oh yeah, that's going to really work. But just being mindful that we're called to be Christians wherever we are, and to be salt and light. So I will read this from the Sermon on the Mount, a reminder to us of our identity in Christ. You are the salt of the earth. If salt has lost its taste, as in if salt is like everything else in the world, if salt is doing what everybody else in the world does on social media, etc. I'm kind of adding to the ESV there. But if salt has lost its taste, how shall its saltiness be restored? It's no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled under people's feet. And you are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden, nor do people light a lamp, put it under a basket, but on a stand. It gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven. That identity that Christ gives us as salt and light is who we're called to be all the time. And it's really one way I like to think about it is it's like our work underneath our work, or the most important thing that we're anywhere and always doing is we are being salt and we are being light. And if there's a moment where I lose sight of that, I get so caught up in making a point, or sometimes trying to be clever, or trying to sound smart, or trying to win. And I lose sight of this mission of what Christ has said for me to do, which is be salt, be light, do things so that people don't just see Matt Love and my brilliance and my cleverness and how funny I am. Really funny.
Really funny.
No one's laughing. This is rough.
We all
it's just
think you're really
alarming.
funny.
If I lose sight of that, though, Christ says, whatever you do, do it so that people give glory to the Father in heaven. And I think if I'm about to do something online that others will not be able to see my peculiar witness and say, this must be a believer, or I could praise God because of this, then maybe it's something that I don't need to do.
I think of Gary Jackson, if any of y'all know him, he teaches at Harding. I work with him in Center for World Missions, but every time he would speak at chapel or, at a meal, and anyone would, say, you did such a good job, like, thank you, it's praise God. Like, that's his first response. And, some of it, rubbed me wrong of, take a compliment, but he really means, praise God that what I said was good for you.
I think about also in the Sermon on the Mount, this connects with one of our classes a couple weeks ago, where Jesus says, do not be anxious about anything. Do not be anxious about anything. And one of the things that we talked about being so difficult about our relationship to technology is that the technology, whether it's a phone or a website or a television news station or whatever, is designed to make us anxious. It's designed to make us feel nervous and afraid. Johnny was telling me about sitting at the coffee shop with some friends, and they were talking politics and all the ways that, if this person gets it, these bad things will happen, or if this person gets it, these bad things. Who's going to be president? I think it was an election. And Johnny said that he told him, he said, I got a question for y'all. Y'all talking about who's going to be president. Who's the king? And there's a stability and a confidence that can come with knowing Christ is in charge. Christ is the king. And all these people telling me all the things I have to be afraid about have to be taken with a grain of salt. It's not that we are imprudent. It's not that we shirk our responsibilities. It's not that we behave in ways in which we're reckless in the world or pretend that we don't live in a dangerous place. We do. But what Christ is saying to us is, don't be anxious. And so this is a really important, I think, practical thing to think about technology. And that is, do a little emotional inventory in your life. Know yourself. And think to yourself, when I do this, do I feel better or worse afterwards? Do I feel happier or more joyful or more peaceful or more generous or more patient after I have been engaging with this or that aspect of my technology? And if you don't, well, then think about that. I was eating ice cream with some cousins and friends last night down in Little Rock, and one of my cousins and I were talking, and we hadn't gotten any ice cream, and she said, if I eat it late at night, I just feel gross. And I said, sometimes in the afternoon, I want something sweet and some dairy and caffeine, and so I want to go over to the coffee shop and get one of those kind of sweet lattes with 2 shots of espresso in it. That sounds really good. And then I find if I have one, that an hour later, I just feel weird. My stomach's kind of grumbly, and I'm a little keyed up. And then I think, oh, I don't like this. And then 3 days later, I think, ooh, that drink sounds good again. Right? And I tell that because how silly that is, because you look at me and say, hey, idiot, don't you know that what you're doing is making you feel this way that's not good, not healthy, etc. One of the hardest things, I think, in our lives is to look in the mirror and take an honest assessment of who we are, how we feel, and what we're doing. And that's a really practical step that we, I think, need to take in regards to our technology. Because it's so invisible. It's one of the things, because it's all around us, we don't notice it. We've said several times about, Matt tells a joke about the 2 fish, and the one says, what water? It's the water we swim in, so we don't think about it. And because we don't think about it, we don't think about it. And because we don't think about it, we don't make wise decisions sometimes.
Yeah, one of the things that social media and the internet has done, I think, is it's flattened out. Everyone has a vote now, right? Everyone can be a celebrity.
Yeah,
You can-
everyone owns a newspaper
you have
these
a,
days,
yeah,
right?
you have a YouTube channel, or you have your own, your followers and all of this. And in some ways, it has made things so easy, a lot of things easy. For instance, just that immediate satisfaction kind of phenomenon where I'm doing things because they're convenient and they're easy, whether it's checking my phone or scrolling or whatever it is, that don't necessarily lead to life, don't lead to good things. They don't make me a better person. They don't make me stronger. And it's not just doing this once or twice, but it's these daily or weekly rhythms of things that we're doing that are they're easy, they're convenient, but over the long haul, they have this effect on us of, right, not making us more virtuous people.
Like junk food for our brains and souls. I think maybe it was Robin was something about this. When trying to eat healthier, one thing you can do is put the chips on a top shelf in a pantry rather than out where you could put the fruit in the middle of the table and the chips, hide them somewhere. Out of sight, out of mind kind of can be helpful in this way. And the same thing I think can be the case with our technology. Just get it where we can't see it. I think that Adria had that line.
Yeah. David, you've been waiting on a comment. Do we have time for a comment? Do we want to save those for the end?
No, go ahead.
Okay. All right, David, go ahead.
We got to follow Jesus. And if we let worldly things get in our way, then we fall.
Absolutely. One thing, Mac, you were mentioning, I think you used the word know yourself, right? And I mentioned this last week, and I don't want to tell this story in a way that makes me seem like, oh, I did good, because I don't, like Mac said, neither of us, we're up here teaching, but I don't know that we'd give ourselves A pluses when it comes to
C-.
how we're using technology. I'm at least a C, so I'm just joking. But what is just really knowing yourself and being honest with yourself when it comes to technology use, and being humble enough to admit where you are. I think sometimes the word addiction applies to certain things, and sometimes with our phones, we want to say, I'm not addicted to my phone. That's overstatement there. Things are fine, and I feel fine, and all of that. But just being honest about what is my rhythm and patterns with my technology, and are those things befitting a Christian? So one thing I mentioned last week, if you weren't here, is just that I was noticing over a few years that I was spending way too much time on Facebook, and I would just check it, and I would kind of like be checking it before I realized what I was doing. You ever have that kind of thing with your phone where you're like, it's in your hand and you're looking at it, and then you realize, how did it get here? Why am I looking at this? And so that kind of thing, and I began to feel it more it's kind of strange. But I felt it more in my thinking. Like I just felt kind of like you were drinking the latte. You just felt bad. I felt kind of bad after it messed with my attention. I felt distracted and irritable because I was on my phone too much. And so one thing that I did was for my Facebook, I gave my wife my password, and I don't have it, and she logs me in every week or every other week, and I check it. And I had all these fears about, I'm going to miss so much, and some of the news that I need to see in the moment. And the truth is, I don't really miss all that much. And I get on every week or every other week, and I've got like 100 notifications, and maybe 2 of those are actually interesting. Most of those are just garbage notifications that I think, why am I getting that in the first place? But I say all that to say, we have to be humble. And that's been a great practice of humility for me. It kind of hurts. It's kind of embarrassing to mention it here and to have to feel like I lack a degree of self-control where I think, no, it's good for me. Maybe at some point I'll get to the place where I feel like it'll be fine. But it's good for me not to have that. I don't need it. It's not a big deal. And it hasn't been life-altering. So just being humble enough to say, this is me, this is where I am, this is what I need. I confess it to a friend. You sound silly. I'm talking about my phone. I'm talking about this social media and what I'm doing on it, or the effect of it and how much time I'm spending. And it's all kind of embarrassing and weird. But being willing to say, I think this is good for me to change.
was thinking about, in connection with that word, 1 Corinthians chapter 6, Paul's writing about sexual immorality in the church, but the opening line in this conversation that he has about sexual immorality is really important, and it's worth noting that it stretches far beyond that aspect of our life into lots of others. This is 1 Corinthians 6 and verse 12. All things are lawful for me. Now this seems like it's kind of like a maxim or a little aphorism, a proverb that the people at Corinth say, and Paul's kind of turning it back on them. They say, look, all things are lawful for us. And Paul says, yeah, all things are lawful. But then he says, but not all things are helpful. Oftentimes in our Christian life, we think about whether or not something is a sin. Is it a sin to have a Facebook account? No. Is it a sin to play games on your phone? No. Is it a sin to post something on Instagram that somebody else doesn't like? No. These aren't wrong. These aren't sin. There's not some law against these things. But the question that Paul calls us to is higher than that. Well, these are all lawful, but is it helpful? Is it helpful? And then he goes on to say, all things are lawful for me. I will not be dominated by anything. Now, did you hear what he says there? Not by anything. How are y'all doing with that? I would give myself less than a C- on not dominated by anything. So many times in my life, I feel like I'm not in control, whether it's people or systems and structures or situations or desires or technology or whatever. I feel like I'm often dominated by these other forces, like I'm out of control. But Paul says it's not about whether or not it's lawful, it's about whether it's helpful. It's not about whether it's okay or permissible or are you doing something wrong. It's about who's got control of your life. And so what he's calling these Corinthians to is self-discipline and self-control. Food for the stomach and the stomach for food, he says, sure. Eyes for color, color for the eyes, sure. But then he says, but God will do away with both. The point being, these are not what's ultimate. And so thinking about not only not being dominated by anything, when there's anything in your life to go, well, I can't not have that, that ought to make you a little nervous. Whatever it is, because of this passage. But beyond that, I also think about this, and this is one of the pragmatic things that I want to think about today. He says, all things are lawful, but not all things are helpful. And it reminds me of the story where Jesus talks about the man had 7 demons and they were cast out and the house was just empty, right? Or the demon was cast out and it was empty and then 7 come back in and he's worse off afterwards. The problem is not just getting rid of something in your life, like, oh, I've got this bad habit of, I come in and I turn the TV on and I watch this news programs that just key me up all day long, and then I go to bed anxious and I get up anxious and I can't have a conversation that are not dominated by that or fill in whichever thing you want. And then you just go, well, I'm just not going to do that. I'm just going to get that out. I'm going to wipe it clean and not have that anymore. Could be a good first step, but the question is, what would be more helpful? And so I want to think also about how we can, if we're going to avoid technology, what do we put in its place? That's one question, and that's one I want to get some of y'all's feedback on. And then 2, what are ways in which we can transform this thing into something helpful? Let's take this as an example since we're reading Paul. Paul had some traits about himself that were pretty bad. Like, do you think Paul was maybe overly intense? Anybody think that was maybe a trait that the Apostle Paul had? Other people were like, I don't know about these Christians. They seem like they're teaching some false teachings. And Paul's like, put them in prison. Let me get the letters from the Sanhedrin and go and arrest them all. Kind of over the top, right? But what God does is not like chill Paul out. What does he do? he turns that intensity toward Christ. I wonder about all the apostles that we never hear about preaching. You know, old Thaddeus, we just don't hear anything about old Thaddeus. Maybe he was quiet. Or Andrew, Peter's brother, we just don't hear much about him, but then we see him quietly bringing Peter to Christ. I wonder if sometimes what we need to do is not just get off our technology, there's something right about that, but also how can we use our technology in ways that we'd say, not only is it lawful, this is really helpful. So I'm curious about some things that you say, these are things in my technological life, my phone, my TV, my whatever, that are actually really helpful. These are good things that I think, well, my life would be impoverished if I didn't have these things. Anybody got something like that that's like a good thing? Go ahead, Pop, talk about it. It says checking on people.
Just calling to see if someone's sick or something like that. Just let them know that you're thinking about them and praying for them.
All right, a way to reach out to encourage folks. What else? Brother David.
I usually, I'm sure you, I've sent music to people.
Brother David sends me songs, not every week, but lots of times, yeah. Shares a song and says, this was meaningful to me. Yeah? Good. What else, Laura?
I like just being able to call people. I think a lot of my fellow college students will agree that, like, being so far from home, it's nice to be able to check in and just reassure parents that you love them and that you're thinking about them. And also, it is also convenient to be able to find gifts for people that are more customized to their likes with online market.
Yeah, all right, how about that? The like work that goes into picking just the right thing to send to somebody, yeah, that's good. And how about talking to people at a distance? I think about our Danny sitting out there in the foyer, and I bet if he were in here, he would say, I sure like being able to keep track of the Belize congregation. If we didn't have this technology, we wouldn't be able to say, you know, how are they doing down there? How are our brothers and sisters? I see Mark back there giving a kind of nonverbal amen. Brother David.
You gotta fall sometimes to get back up right.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Got to fall sometimes to get back up, right? I think about there are times in which I look at my life on my phone and I think, oh boy, too much time, even just like texting and emailing. I get a lot of texts and a lot of emails because I'm on these various group chats. You know, it's 5 or 6 people on there, and so then sometimes it'll really just blow up and you get a lot. But I also think about what a rich blessing that is. That I have oftentimes good, profound, meaningful, helpful conversations with these people. Talking about keeping in touch, people a long way to them. My cousin John this morning, my cousin John always sends me reels on Instagram. We don't call much. We don't text a whole lot, but he sends me reels on Instagram, and I'm like Matt. I get them maybe once a week or whatever, and I've got several things from him on there. And it's just a way for us to keep in touch. So he sent me one about this guy wearing a loud jacket and stuff for Easter. And so this morning I put a loud jacket on and took a photo and sent it to him and said, you know, I'm trying to keep up. But I wouldn't have talked to him today.
Yeah, I heard Jeff Wisdom. He's talked about Facebook a few times that like 80-90% of it is trash, but 10% is really great. And I think about the sort of connections that I have with people that I would not have if I didn't have social media like that, and announcements that I see, and good things that come across my way because of that.
Maddie, let's take, and then I want to say one more thing about this.
Yes, other good ways with technology, I think of like long trips we go on, and I think Matt, he likes to listen to like podcasts or audiobooks, and those can be helpful, not just audiobooks, but
Good. So education and like beneficial entertainment, right? Those are great things. One of the things I think is also relevant, especially in terms of social media, is we're often very passive about it, but we also can like put something good out there. My instinct is to say to everyone, just get off and don't post. But I also, I'm doing this thing at work right now where we're establishing a chair to honor one of my former professors that I really love. And we made a video about that and we put it online. And it was like thousands of people who had been his students watched the video. And then they began talking about how blessed they were by his life and his ministry and the things that he said. And someone commented on the video and said, I remember a lesson he did that had these stick figures, and boy, I wish I could still remember all the details of that. So Haley Pruitt's in charge of managing this webpage for us, and she saw that, and she called him and said, do you remember this thing? He said, oh yeah. He got his phone out, he made a video, he put the little things up and posted it online, and here this person was really blessed because someone took the time to make something really positive. I think about the ways that when we were living in Ohio and we had little kids, Jenny would talk about, oh, I haven't posted anything in a while and would feel bad about it. And I said, you don't have to feel bad about posting. But she's like, but people back home like seeing the kids. Any grandparents in here like getting a text, a picture? It's nice to see the new grandbaby, but pretty good to be able to see some connection beforehand and to bring joy to people in that way.
Right along those lines, I was thinking about the way we use technology in a different sense. Sometimes we use it to like self-medicate, right? The reasons what drives us to get on and to scroll is sometimes we're down or we're tired or we're trying, we want to detach, the doom scrolling as it's called, right? And Angela Gorel wrote a book called Always On, and I've mentioned it a few times, but that's a really helpful book with technology. And one thing that she talks about in that book is how passive engagement leads to dissatisfaction, but actually people who actively engage on social media receive a lot of good benefits, kind of like what you're just saying. So it's not just a matter of, am I going to post? Let me post, but it's also getting on something like Facebook or Instagram with the right mindset and intention, rather than I'm getting on to check out and to scroll, and which will probably leave you feeling not great, but to get on and say, I want to get on and engage. Not start a fight, not engage with every post, but just say, I want to be that person who likes someone else's post or who comments something positive, and engage in those ways to be salt and light with others also actually has good benefit to us, leaves us feeling a lot better than the passive kind of engagement.
Yeah, I think that's right. I was bragging on Jenny earlier this week about being a good mom, a good parent. One of the things that she does, when she's scrolling, I'm often like, what are you looking at over there? And sometimes it's design things, sometimes it's friends, but a lot of like science and technology stuff. She was showing this really cool video where they have these little robots that valet park cars, so your car doesn't get dinged and you don't have to turn it on, you leave it locked, and they just pick your car up, moving it. It was really awesome, and she sent me this little, a little reel about it, and I was like, oh, that's so cool. And I was thinking, how come she gets so much of that? Well, she's interested, but also she sends that stuff to Elijah, who's interested in that kind of thing. And then they talk about it. I think about the way that, like, when I was a kid, we didn't have social media, but we had TV and movies. And we would go up to the school, and Mama would borrow a VCR from the school on a Friday night, and then we would go to the movie store and rent a VHS and bring it home, and the whole family would watch a movie together. And we're close family for many reasons, but one of the things that makes us close is we have a similar library of entertainment backgrounds. So we quote movies to each other, and we reference back to the movies that we watch, and that's made us close. It's been part of our community building. And I think about, especially with my oldest, but my younger two coming on now too, the way that there are little things online that are just fun, silly, funny things, but they have become something that we do together. Elijah will walk into our room sometimes late at night, and he will say, can I pet that dog? Can I pet that dog? Because, if you don't know, there is a really hilarious video of this little girl wanting to pet a bear. Turns out it's a fake, but I don't want to go into all that. It's a really hilarious video. And I'm telling you, the first time we watched it, Elijah was just laughing, and then he showed it to Jenny, and she just was laughing, and they showed it to me, and I laughed. I can't tell you how many times we've watched that video and laughed about it together. And if you say to me, look, here's an inane, silly video of a little kid saying, can I pet that dog, about a bear, and you go, now, is that a sin? No. Is it helpful? Yeah! Yeah, that's real helpful. And I think like not being, just like I'm talking earlier about be anxious about nothing, not being overly anxious about this, where if you walk away from this class and you're like, oh no, I got on my phone and I watched a cat video and then I watched another cat video and they were delightful and really just perked me up and made me feel good, that you should, come forward as we stand and sing today. I think even little things like sharing a funny video of a cat or Elijah, Jenny does this better than I do, she and Elijah, but is it pandas? Like, do y'all ever watch videos of pandas on Jungle Gyms? They're the stupidest animal. They're like a big ball of jelly, and then they just fall all the time. And if we're sitting in bed, and I'm just getting there, and Jenny's on her phone, and I hear her start laughing, I think, well, what's the panda done? And sure enough, I look over, and it's boom, it's falling down. And she laughs, and I laugh, and it's a positive kind of moment. Like, that's what I mean about, are all things helpful? It's helpful to watch a panda fall off a Jungle Gym sometime, and you can't get that without your technology. Right? Nobody in the room has a panda jungle gym in their backyard where you can go and be really present. So when I talk about this, about not be anxious and is it helpful, one of the things that I think is really good is to say we don't have to be overly anxious about even the dangers that we're talking about. Aware of them? Yes. Honest about them? Yes. Self-aware to say, is this what's really going on with me? Yes. But sometimes I think we end up Christians see some bad thing in the world, and then we latch onto that, and it becomes one more thing. And so whether it's this particular political cause or this moral cause, and I see us sometimes we get hold of even good things like being wise with our technology or evangelizing the world, or I think about like Options Pregnancy Center, where we work with these young women who are in a really scary place. Man, I'm so glad we do that. But I also know Christians that their entire life is consumed with, what are we going to do about the abortion question? In ways that I think, remember, God is still in control. God is still in control, even with all kinds of real and problematic things that are facing us, even with things like our technology and the dangers it poses. Yeah, we can be wise about this, but we don't have to become one more thing that we obsess about and fear about. We can just be prudent on this. I'll tell one story, then, Matt, I'll let you maybe have the last word. Last week, I guess I came home, and Elijah, these teenagers, sometimes when they want to talk, they sort of hover. Have you seen this? They don't know how to say, hey, can I talk to you for a second? Or if we want to walk and talk about something, they just kind of hover around. And so Elijah was just sort of hovering, and I know he kept looking at his little siblings like, when are you going to leave the room? And I was like, is he unhappy? So anyway, he comes over eventually, and I was like, what's up? I was just sitting in my chair, and he goes, I need you to put the password in my phone, because we have screen time passwords and things like that on his phone. And he said, put the password in my phone for me. I said, okay, what's up? And he goes, I want to change one of my settings on Instagram. I said, okay, what's going on? He goes, well, y'all probably know this, but seniors in high school these days only go to school about an hour and a half a day. They're not at school very much. So he gets out of school at noon, and he comes home, and the days he doesn't have work, he just kind of has a couple hours where there's not much going on, and he's home alone, and he said, I really just don't like, if I'm home alone, I'm on it too much. I don't like some of the stuff it's showing me. I want to put a time limit on it where it gives me an hour, and then that's it. And I said, well, yeah, we can do that. I was so proud. Isn't my son great? Let's all just brag on Elijah for a second. Yeah, I was just so proud and tickled, and I said, well, yeah, let me do that. So we put the code in, and he put it in. And I said, but now, if it's showing you bad stuff, is that time limit going to be enough? He said, yeah, I think it'll be enough. I said, well, we're going to come back and talk about it. So I think it was yesterday. I said, Well, how did it work on the time? He goes, it's going great. Thanks for helping me with it. Just little things like taking a little ownership and saying, let me put a time limit on this, because it's like those, I'm talking about all these funny things, all these fun things that we do as a family even, that are good. He does a Bible study with his friends through an app. But he says, an hour in, it goes south. And there's an awareness of, here's the best way to make this work for me, not against me. And I thought, that's good word. I'm going to tell the class about that. Matt, you want to wrap us up here?
Yeah, my mind kind of got stuck on the panda thing, and I went blank. That was so great, and I was just...
Have you
I
seen
was
those
gone.
videos?
I've not seen them,
Oh,
so...
Jenny will help you out.
I was thinking about watching them, if anybody would notice if I watched it over here really discreetly. It's hard to think of a last word, but as you're talking about all of that, I think of the ways that technology can kind of move us toward one another rather than away from one another or into other groups, right? Away from other Christians, away from the church. And I'm thinking of some like litmus tests or things that we just checking your motive or checking what's going on here really with this. And secrecy may be one of those is, you know, if the way that I'm using my technology, is it something I want to keep from my wife? Is it something I want to keep from my friends, even from my children, from my parents, from other people in the church? If either just my habits of technology or the things I'm doing with it are making me withdraw or moving me into some other group, then I think maybe that's an indication that something's not right. But if it's something that can be transparent about and vulnerable about, and that actually connects me with other people, and I'm thinking of others, and hey, I want to share this with them, or I want to see what they think about this, and then I think that's probably a healthy indication. So,
really good word.
One word about, and then I'll give you the last word.
A few.
Okay. Just this verse came to mind when you were thinking of the good. That's not necessarily Christian panda videos, but they're just
I don't know that the
fun.
pandas are Christian.
They're not.
They may be Buddhist. They're from China.
Unregenerate pandas. Finally, brothers, whatever is true, honorable, just, pure, lovely, commendable. If there's any excellence, if there's anything worthy of praise, think about these things. And I think that's probably good advice for us of what we spend our time and giving our attention to online.
Yeah, good last word. This wraps up this class, but I did want to mention we have several questions in our question jug back here. But if you have something, it does not necessarily need to relate to something we've had in this class. It's anything that you want to say, I'd like to hear us talk about this together in class. Drop a question in the jug back there. And next week, I'll start a class inspired by Cliff Copeland where we'll just pull a question out and we'll talk about it. Now, to be fair, I will read the questions before I just pull them out in case some of you pranksters in the room, I don't know where Paige Spillman is, put something in there just to mess with me. Did I see a hand? Robin? Even at our technology seminar that's coming up on
Next week,
a week from
Next
today
Sunday,
at, is it 5 o'clock?
5
is that right?
p.m.
5
City
p.m.
Hall.
at the community center, the
City Hall's community room.
So, yeah, that's a great thing, and Robin can walk you through some of the particulars of that. Appreciate everybody being here this morning, and God bless you. Drop a question if you want on the way out.